I don't think I've told this on the podcast, but my sister got married at the end of July, and my dad, bless him, was, very excited about his father of the bride speech. So my sister told him, like, you have 5 minutes. He comes to me and he's like, okay, you're going to be sitting like right in my line of sight. I'm only going to need 3 minutes, but like tell me when it's 3 minutes so that if I can wrap it up and then be done by 4 minutes. And then I'm not even going to go close to 5 minutes. Give him the signal for 3, give him the signal for 4. At some point I give up and I turn to the videographer and I was like, how long has he been going on for? And she looked at the little, timer on her camera and she whispers back, 14 minutes. I was like, oh my God.
Jeez.
Oh, bless him. And that was with him skipping an entire section of his
That's when
planned speech because he was too emotional to talk about my sister, so he didn't talk about her at all.
I was gonna say that's when you need that Academy Award music to just swell
Yeah.
slightly to really let him know,
Play
like,
him
okay,
off.
play
Yeah,
him off.
bless him. His best friend and like my godparents, their daughter, one of my closest friends, had a more intimate wedding of maybe about 60 people-ish. Her dad went around the room and literally thanked everyone individually for being there. And I think my dad thought he could get away with the same thing with a wedding of 200 people. And,
Jeez,
bless him.
that's commitment.
It is optimism.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's an optimistic way of putting it.
Hey guys, welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a Global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from Good Morn, and I'll be your host as you, I, and our international Hanza accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Sintra across the continent. It's been such an intense few months for fans of the Witcher series. We got Andrzej Sapkowski's latest novel, Crossroads of Ravens, as well as season 4 of Netflix's The Witcher. I hope that you have been enjoying everything that the continent has to offer in any medium. I'm working on pulling together a couple of things for the podcast, and I'm excited to share them with you when the time comes. With that ominous announcement, in the meantime, welcome to Koj and Abe to our Hanza on Patreon. Thank you to our patrons and our producer-level patrons, Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Sharp from Ingberg Glamorai, The Ritual and Roach, Libby, John of Riblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Kate the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Miriam Tamaria, Softie, Lisa C., and Sidna. If you would like to learn more about supporting Breakfast in Beauclair, visit patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, Brett from the US and Softie from the UK call in for Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows, Chapter 5. Join us as we discuss lawful cruelty and corruption, Angouléme's arrival, the making of the hanza, courage and bravery, blind revenge, and prophetic dreams. Without further ado, let's get to our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows, Chapter 5. Hey guys, welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair. My name is Alyssa, and today we're welcoming 2 members of our Hanza to the show. You'll recognize my first guest from episodes 29 and 30 of the podcast, covering Chapter 1 of Andrzej Sapkowski's Blood of Elves, our Around the Table YouTube series, as well as the podcasts Whispers of Oxenfurt and On the Path. He's a high school history teacher specializing in U.S. history, American pop culture, and psychology, with a degree in history focusing on medieval Europe, the Crusades, and France and England. My second guest is one of this season's beloved co-hosts. Please welcome Brett from the US and Softie from the UK. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hi. Softie, welcome back for yet another episode of Tower of Swallows. And Brett, it is so lovely to have you. When you told me our last recording was in April 2019, and I went and saw that it was episodes 29 and 30, I wanted to vomit. I was like, there's no way it's been that long.
Well, I think I misspoke on that. I meant Whispers of Oxenfurt, the podcast that I did about the Witcher books, which I thought, and in that episode I listened to it yesterday. I said that it was the only podcast devoted to The Witcher. Apparently, there's like a Spanish one that I didn't notice before. But at that time, I guess it was the only English one. So my episode was April 2019.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
yours started in August of 2019.
August 15th.
Yes, because I looked that up too, just to make sure. Because I was like, for some reason, I thought you started yours in 2018.
I started Good Morin
Good
in
morning. Okay.
2018. So I tried to start the podcast in 2018, but was woefully unsuccessful, but I think ended up in a much better place.
Yes, absolutely. Then it's always, the first through the door. Mine, it's so rudimentary. It was like 22 or 23 minutes. Half of it was recapping the chapter with a little bit thrown in. And then the last half was me just rambling about a tweet that I got, an email I got about content creating, about supporting creators. I'm just like, oh my. And I was speaking so slow because I kind of had a head cold. I'm like, how the hell did anybody listen to this?
We focus on progress, not perfection in the world of podcasting.
It's progress, and this Breakfast in Beauclair improved upon Whispers of Oxenfurt tenfold.
Oh, thanks. Well, it is so lovely to see you. What has been up since the last time you were on Breakfast in Beauclair? I know that I did a couple of episodes of On the Path, tragically talking about the Percy Jackson film series. But aside from that, how have you been? What have you been up to?
Yeah, that was a blast having you on because those movies were just everybody I talked to that read the Percy Jackson books had not a decent thing to say about those movies, and they were just, I guess, a travesty would probably be the easiest way to say it. But up to me, basically, On the Path was a movie podcast I did with my co-host Lucy from Newcastle, around kind of the same area there. Softie's from that north of England in there. We have put a hiatus on it mainly because we kind of stagnated out, like creatively, I would say. There you go. It's even that creatively, there you go. But also simply because there's a certain climate in Texas, like politically, and I would say things in that podcast that may come back to hurt me, like professionally as a public high school teacher. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of put the kibosh on it. And it coincided perfectly with a breakup that I had with my girlfriend last week. It was all good. We're all friends and all that. So that's something that's going down as well. So what's going on is now I am basically have no responsibilities or anything like that. This is the only thing that I have on my palette to do. And then that's it. And then I'm free as a bird here.
As the person that's up to my eyeballs in work, I'm both gently respectful and envious of it.
Yes, when you said that this week about how you're caught up with work, and then I saw you met up with some people as well.
Yes.
I just saw that.
Yeah.
Exciting. I literally said, "Oh shit," and then typed that into Instagram to message to you. So when you said that, like you're so busy, I was like, "Huh." Well, I'm the complete opposite, and I have absolutely nothing to do. So we have evened it out in the world.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, actually, on that note, last night I got to hang out with Tim and Val from another Witcher podcast, Whiskey with Witcher, who have come up to New York to go see live theater. They saw Masquerade. They saw this like Helena Bonham Carter immersive audio experience called Viola's Room. I got to take them out for drinks and drinks and drinks and food and ice cream, and it was lovely.
Yeah, they're absolutely lovely. I love them to death. And sometime we're gonna get all of us together somewhere,
Like the
and
Avengers.
and then we will have drinks and drinks and drinks and more drinks.
And maybe like brisket or something.
If it's here, and I got to do it if y'all come to Texas.
Well, one of the reasons I'm really excited to have you on the show with Softie, I feel like I'm going to get so much more than I bargained for out of having the two of you on together as both like history buffs and lore buffs and all this other stuff. You guys haven't met before, right?
No,
No.
we did
No.
while you went away just before. So we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite intimidated because obviously I've listened to Brett before, and it's like, oh no, there's going to be a terrible comparison made between voices and stuff because he's got one of those lovely voices and I haven't.
No, you do.
No, it's a good dichotomy there, I think, of where, you have a very proper, very professional, and it feels like, I don't know, maybe it's most Americans, but I almost divert to an English accent, especially when it comes to like medieval history. I'm like, they can say something. I'm like, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but they sing it so professionally and proper. And I'm like, no one's going to believe me, some yokel with my accent over there, of somebody that's kind of there. So I'm like, okay, I'll divert to the authority of the accent.
Okay. Well, we're certainly going to be mentioning ox gangs and furlongs, aren't we? So
We
Yeah.
are now. No, but you brought that up because it's true. As I'm reading this, like Knight Errant is in there when they talk about like Beauclair and how they're
Mm.
patrolling the marches. And I'm like, okay, well, the marches, talk about that, the fringes of these like counties in Knight Errant. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to bog down with this minutia of just medieval. I'm like, I have to stay on topic of the book. So if I ever start trailing off, feel free to either steer me back on or just cut me out entirely in the edit.
Oh
I
dear.
think, Alyssa, you've got to step in as Milva with your belt here. I think make us leave it till the end if there's any time left.
That
I'll
was
be
what,
it'll be more of a gentle nudge than a belt whip, but but I will keep an eye on the time. Well, I'm really excited to bring you both and both of your expertise into the chapter today. Today, we'll continue our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows with Chapter 5, in which the Hanza discovers they'll be ambushed, adds another member to their company, and parts ways to exact vengeance on their hunters. Here's a quick synopsis of the chapter from future Alyssa. I'm so sorry. This future Alyssa is sick. All right, so Chapter 5 opens with reflections on vengeance and justice, framing the tension between law and cruelty. After separating from the beekeepers, Geralt is brought before Folco Ardevelte, prefect of Riedbrunn, who presides over a busy hub of Nilfgaardian soldiers and settlers. Geralt clashes with the prefect over the nature of law. Folco insists that order requires ruthless punishment, while Geralt counters that such methods inevitably lead to corruption and tyranny. Folco offers Geralt a deal. He and his companions will be free to continue to the Druids if they hunt down Nightingale, the head of a local gang in Belhaven who is waiting to ambush Geralt. As part of this bargain, the young informant Angoulême is released into the Witcher's care. Regis and Geralt later puzzle over how their pursuers knew the company's movements, sparking suspicion of an informant among them. Geralt openly accuses Cahir, leading to a bitter fight that Milva breaks up with her belt. Officially branded a hanza, the company splits. Regis, Dandelion, and Milva ride toward Toussaint, while Geralt, Angoulême, and Cahir ride to Belhaven to intercept Nightingale. As they prepare, Geralt reveals what drives him. He believes Ciri died on the equinox, and his purpose is narrowed to vengeance. He embraces the hunt with grim resolve. The chapter closes with Ciri in the swamp with Visigoda, reflecting that this was the only time she dreamt of Geralt since Thanedd. In her dream, she longs to tell him the truth, that she is alive and that the Witcher's assumptions are tragically wrong. So now that we've gotten a wonderful synopsis of the chapter from future Alyssa, I'd love to hear both of your overall thoughts, any chapter highlights and lowlights on Tower of Swallows chapter 5.
I kind of hinted on this before we started recording. I haven't read this in the 6 years since the previous time. I didn't read anything before. I didn't read anything after. So I was coming into it
Okay.
almost like blind to it. And I only remembered that it was Folco, Geralt, Angoulême, and that he saves her, if you will. She was going to be hanged or executed no matter what. I remember Milva beating Angoulême and then her crying me, be like, oh, I love Angoulême. And I know a lot of people didn't. And I don't know what this was. Maybe something's changed in the past. But what I loved about this chapter was it is essentially only 2 scenes. And it is yap, yap, yap. It is talking. And just when you think the talking has gone on long enough, something really interesting happens. And the highlight of this chapter to me is Cahir and Geralt just swinging on each other, and Cahir just really taking it to Geralt. I thought it was hilarious that that's the way it went down.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, the thing with Cahir is up to that point, he's been a bit of a victim. You know, we find him locked in a box and then he's being driven away by Geralt every time he comes near them, like this, poor stray dog that he keeps throwing stones at.
Yeah.
To him to actually stand up to Geralt at this point, it's quite something. He's sort of sitting there saying, well, you're not talking to me like that. You're going to accuse me of being a traitor. You're going to be eating a knuckle sandwich. So it was, tremendous.
Yeah.
Milva jumping in is just fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the irreverentness that I love, because I do remember that Cahir was in the box, and then he just follows Geralt, and Geralt knows that he's following him and just looks back, and like you said perfectly, it's like a dog that just keeps following him, and Geralt's like, okay, come along. Another thing about this highlight too, and I promise, I have a metaphorical note up there that I will not compare this to the show. I promise I won't do it, but I'm going to do it this one time, and then that'll be it, I promise, okay? But like, this is why I fell in love with this book series. This is moody Geralt. This is monologuing Geralt. This is emotional Geralt. This is not listening to better judgment like Regis and just accusing things, even though Regis is like, don't do that, and he does it. And like, this is what I wanted to see. And this is not what we got in the series. I love this version of a Geralt that we don't have in the games. The game of Geralt is like this. It's always this gruff. And it's half a page of Geralt just rambling on and on and on and waxing nostalgic and waxing philosophically. And it's just this is what I love. This is Sapkowski rambling on and on, if you will, but it's so great. And I think I said it before the recording is reading this chapter has made me want to start rereading again, like overall, because this chapter is why I love Sapkowski for the good and the bad and the unnecessary, and why I love this series and the character of Geralt specifically.
Yeah, when we think about the chapter in like the context of vengeance and the context of like bloodlust and order, and you have this like scene between the prefect and Geralt where they debate that, and then Geralt goes to exact his own vengeance. Cahir retaliates, and then Milva just takes them both to task with her own brand of order. Like, it feels very, like, complete. It is a chapter that is certainly like a transition. We're in a lull where they're just journeying effectively, but as you said, Brett, even in the way that Sapkowski delivers it, it's still interesting for us as readers. Continues to, if not push the plot forward, push our characters forward. So it's really appreciated.
I gave this chapter a little title in my notes there, which was, Crime and Punishment, : Geralt gets it wrong again, brackets, and again. Because it really is Geralt going off on his own with this one again. Should definitely get someone else to do the thinking, I feel. But he is the leader of the Hansa, so everyone has to defer to him a bit.
It is, one, a blessing that the Hansa is named at this point, which is where, of course, the Breakfast in Beauclair community gets its own name from. So it's like, oh, wow, the thing, it happened. I was like pointing at my book like Leonardo DiCaprio. And also like Geralt, after all this faffing around for like 3 fucking books, like finally gets his shit together enough to be like, no, I'm going to have some sense of stance and determination. And I say we're going to do this specific thing. And by God, this is the first time that that's happened in a very long time.
I like that he takes charge of it because it seems like he says that they have to split up, and it's almost the end of Lord of the Rings where they get broken. Where it's like Boromir dies, and then we have it like split. And that's kind of where this is now, where they're like, you 3 are going here, you 3 are going there. And it's almost that Geralt has just had it. And then once Cahir kind of beats his ass a little bit, and then Milva beats both of their asses, and then eventually just saying like, this is it, Dandelion. I should also mention this. I read it as I listened to Peter Kenny, and like, oh my God, like it's almost distracting how he just changes up the voices and goes into it. And oh my God, his Dandelion is just such of the foppish aplomb that you would say that I had to almost keep going back because I was just laughing. It is almost just Dandelion, kind of like that. And it's just almost just fop. And I just like, okay, that is just so perfect for Dandelion and him complaining. And Geralt basically being like, everybody shut up. I'm the leader. This is what's going to happen. You can leave if you want. This is about Ciri. And then Dandelion even kind of falls in order or falls in line.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to go back and listen to the audiobooks before we started recording, but there were definitely a few scenes where I'm like, shoot, I really should go back and listen to the audiobooks again. And I'm so excited we get a new audiobook from Peter Kenny at the end of this month with Crossroads of Ravens. I think that that's like a really great time to go into our discussion questions for this episode. This chapter opens up with quotes on vengeance and justice. The two that appear here are, whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, which is from Genesis 9:16, and a quote from Visigoda, who we've gotten to know through series excerpts. Verily, great self-righteousness and great blindness are needed to call the gore pouring from the scaffold justice. What follows is then a conversation between the prefect, Geralt, where Folco talks about cruelty and then Geralt talks about subsequent corruption. Do you guys think that Folco is right, that lawful cruelty maintains order, or is Geralt right that it only corrupts? And who do you think makes a stronger case and why?
I would say that I think it depends on why they're doing it. And I don't know if I can see why Folco's doing it because we don't know him like anything. Like this is where we're introducing him, right? This is the first that we hear of him. Okay.
Yeah.
So like we don't know what that is. It is a medieval fantasy. But again, and Softie, please interject or correct me here. typically in the medieval form of justice, it was about putting people in their place. It was the upper nobility to the lower nobility. It was the nobility to the peasants. And it was, if you rebel, then you're going to be treated a certain way. And it's essentially a warning. There's no rehabilitation when it comes to anything like that in the Middle Ages. And I know, Softie, we spoke of it before again as well, like the Herring of the North is something that happened in the area that you were kind of living in, where it's northern England into that, like up right to the modern border of Scotland there, where it was William the Conqueror. Right after he conquers a Norman conquest, he goes back to Normandy, and then the North starts to kind of rebel. He pays the Danes to leave and then goes scorched earth, burning farms to the ground, killing livestock, starving people. It was something like tens of thousands, up to like 100,000 people estimated starved to death. And essentially, that was William showing everybody, this is what happens when you rebel. This is what's going to happen when you break the law. It wasn't about, righting a wrong or anything like that. It was saying, if this is what you do, I am going to punish you with death and everything. And then he stripped all the English of their nobility and put like Normans in place. When it comes to this, I can't speak for Folco, but it's either saying like, oh, we need order, or it's simply, if you're going to make my life hard, I'm going to end yours.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite noticeable, the quote that he uses from Genesis, that typically if someone's talking about crime and punishment and things, the Bible verse that normally comes up at this point is, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Yeah.
But we're not discussing reciprocity in this one at all. This isn't an equivalent exchange we're talking about. This is about drawing blood and things in the name of justice. And it's interesting because it's not a full quote that is put here. He's actually cut the end of it off, which is significant because it changes the meaning quite a lot. The actual full quote is, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. It's not actually a full stop at that point, it's a comma, and it's, for God made man in his own image. And this, interestingly, as medieval scholars, we should know, is the reason why in the church they didn't used to draw blood. So this is why in D&D all the clerics are carrying maces and stuff, because they're not supposed to use edged weapons, because it's meant to be, a desecration of God's amazing work, which is man, that you shouldn't be destroying it by shedding blood, which leads us on to the whole thing with, when you're talking about crime and punishment in the Middle Ages, you're absolutely right. Property crime and things, that's dealt with the lord of the manor, and it's absolutely draconian. That is, you steal, hand cut off if you're lucky, but usually it's just straight death. There's no colonies to send people to at this point. But then there's the church courts, and they deal with morality and things. But when they get to the serious end in the church courts, there's a thing. It's like quite a simple expression that people sometimes use. Well, if I'm pressed, when someone's asking, and that comes from, they used to cover people with big metal plates and put bigger and bigger weights on top of them, trying to get a confession out of someone until they died, because they weren't allowed to slice them open. So just because of that very quote, that's where it all comes from. It's this idea that drawing blood is somehow desecrating the work of God. So it's an interesting quote to have used, but it's fascinating, that the bit he uses is great. And it leads in very well to, Visigoth's point of view. It's a nice, healthy reminder with Visigoth that he's twice had to run away from the place that he's living in because he can't help himself. When he wants to tell the truth about something, if he's putting it in writing, he feels it's so important he has to put it down. And yet we see him when he's talking to Ciri that he's quite happy to hide his thoughts sometimes. But he can't do it in writing. He's writing for the future. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing in like the rest of that quote.
So one thing to add in there is, that's the Old Testament. That was a quote from Genesis. That's like old Jewish law. There's also Matthew 26, which is essentially those who live by the sword die by the sword. So then you kind of have in the same way also there from the New Testament and the Christian angle as well, that is in both of the Old and the New Testaments.
Yeah, that is the way that Folco seems to describe it. I think on one hand, the future that he describes, or like the vision for what he deems like, I guess this future vision is like very compelling in that, like, obviously don't people want a world that's safe? Don't people want a world where like they can leave their belongings at like a tavern table and they don't have to worry about them? While that feels like an of course, you can only respond to that with like, of course people want to feel safe. But then he justifies kind of like the means to the end by saying like, well, this is the price that we pay for safety, and this is what we need to do in order to create that. And I feel like you just hear that and it's like, I don't know about the methods then. And I think that's certainly where Visigoda's quote kind of comes in, where it's just like, it is that sense of self-importance of like, who are you to determine that not only set the method, but that the severity and the cruelty with which you execute that is justified. And then obviously you have kind of the reality that Geralt then illustrates in like, well, if people are afraid, then they'll turn to corruption. And, you create a world in which a witcher thrives because everybody is too afraid to exist. I feel like you get to a point with Falco and then you're just like, I don't know, like, oh, he's a little bit nuts.
Well, because he says, correct me if I'm wrong again, if
Mm.
Angoulême helps, then she'll be hanged. If she doesn't, then she'll be impaled, eyes gouged out, and like breasts removed with red hot pincers.
Yep, that is the quote.
So that's the thing. It's like, again, a hanging is a traditional thing of the lower non-nobility, peasant class, like that. You get hanged. You don't get hanged typically if you're noble unless you do something really, really bad. But usually that was drawn and quartered in like England and whatnot. But yeah, so to do it, it goes back to, if you're going to punish them or execute him and it's about justice, why are you impaling? Why are you gouging eyes out? Why are you, and again, very much specifically, because it's a woman, are you removing their breasts with red hot pincers? Are you doing that to men also? Because if you're only doing that to women, then you're making it specifically aimed harsher at women than men. Are they trying to say that women who break the law are worse than men because that's not something they should do?
Yeah, I assume that everyone was getting a similar sort of treatment. And interestingly enough, though, the prefect also talks about Nightingale and also talks about how horrified he is that Nightingale uses knives to make sure that, like, women aren't hiding anything, which, kind of gives you quite a bit to imagine. And he's found the homes that are in ruins, the people dismembered, and all this other stuff. And he believes that by using the same methods, he's justifying using the same torturous methods because the other people or the other side is also doing that. That kind of like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of thing of just like, I feel like everything gets a little bit more intense and the bar gets continually set toward cruelty, because you're justifying inching forward. But it does offer interesting contrast to Dijkstra and the hangings that happen, is it in the previous book, where they're talking about all the dancing gestures on the scaffolds. And for Dijkstra, like, your punishment is death, but it's not like a spectacle, so it happens privately at dawn, and like it's just a simple hanging. Meh.
It's performative cruelty, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's certainly intriguing the way that it's laid out in that way, that, it is the performance that's the problem. Inherently that the death penalty has never been proven to deter anyone. It's not something. So this is way more extreme. This is like, well, if we find you guilty of this, we're going to do something so horrendous that, that might be a deterrent. Who could tell? What it really brings to mind is just how lawless everything is, that we've already seen it in the previous books as well, where the rats are riding around in Jiso and stuff, that this is not a well-settled area. This is still the frontier as far as the empire is concerned. They've only recently moved up into these more northern areas. They're not in full control. Quite often the countries are still being treated as self-governing. And what we find here in Rietbrunner is Fulco as the local prefect. He doesn't have any standing forces as such in which to put people down. He's got, as Nilfgaardian soldiers come through the area, they will come under his control while they're there. And that's as far as it goes. And he's concerned, obviously, about how Nightingale, and as Geralt raises it as well, it's like, whenever this sort of thing happens, the most lawless and awful people actually end up being the ones in the uniforms, which is kind of looking forward to to later in the book.
Yeah.
So it's and it's really interesting because that frontier life of it, because this, describe Rietbrunner as this stockade with these buildings in the middle and then this huge area of tents and shacks around it. And this is exactly like it used to be in the American colonial frontier. When you think of the forks of the Ohio, where the French-Indian Wars all kicked off with, the French and English rubbing up against each other at Fort Duquesne. It's the same thing there. There's huge numbers of people trying to move west, and the crown saying, no, we shouldn't go any further. We're going to end up in war in France if you go further. And the French diligently burying lead markers under the ground with the French coat of arms on it. So, see, this is France, because of buried bits of lead in the ground. Fantastic. The fact that there's the First Nations there already, no one cares about that.
Can't argue with
But,
that logic. Yeah.
extraordinary. So it's actually got, quite strong echoes of that. But really what he was doing, I think, here is he's talking about all the informants and things. He's harking back to his own sort of early days and things with living in the Soviet bloc with lots of these countries that are supposedly self-governing and willingly members of, the great Soviet Union and things. But it was all done through secret police and informants and people desperately unhappy and again quite performative, horrible things done to people, deportations to concentration camps and things, and sent to a gulag and stuff. They wanted people to be frightened. That was how you forced everyone to comply. And again, flying your country's original flag and stuff would get you locked up for goodness knows how long, things like that. So that's what he was writing about. But it works just as well in the colonial setting. His authorial voice is really showing in this chapter. This is literally about what Sapkowski feels, and he puts it out, I think, really well. The only slack I can give Fulco is because of this lawless state that he's got going on in the area. His law and order hasn't yet been established, and that's the bit that's quite interesting. You think about Wild West and stuff and sending the sheriff in, here's a gunman to take care of the gunmen.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, so maybe when the shooting stops and people stop being shot, maybe then you can bring in law and order and a written code and stuff. But I don't know how far you would agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, to quickly add on that with the medieval references, if you know the Hundred Years' War, the Edwardian phase, and the chevauchés that the English would do into France, what William the Conqueror did in the north, they would kind of do that there. It's decentralized. And I think that's an understanding that people are going to evaluate and in-depth get into any kind of medieval or especially a medieval fantasy is it's not like a game where this is an area, it's a set boundary. There is a baron, there is a count, there's a duke, and they control everything under there. And then when something happens in this one area, this little town, that people will then go handle it. It's like that's not how it works. It took a lot of time to get people to go everywhere. So then when you had a war-torn area, like in this book right here, like in real life in the 100 Years' War, you're on your own. And it's up to that local count, that local leader to be able to defend the people. And if they've been pulled with the king's army far away, there's nobody there. And their towns are going to get burned, the peasants are going to get killed, the livestock's going to get slaughtered, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they're just going to continue to terrorize on. So here with Folco, it's simply his version, I guess you can say, of doing that is I'm going to kill anybody doing anything bad and hope that the word gets around that if you come and do bad things here, that bad things will happen to you, and go do them to other places where nobody's in charge.
Yeah. In true Sapkowski fashion, there is no real conclusion, and he doesn't impose one as an author, unlike who is right in this scenario. Geralt gets a bit of the last word in, and then Folco brings in Angoulême. When we get to this scene, Angoulême joins the Hanza from the gallows. How would you guys say her introduction compares to the rest of the companies? And what does it reveal about the Hanza's constant need to just adapt?
I like that Geralt thought it was Ciri because it instantly makes it seem that he had that connection. And then it's just maybe he always wanted that to be Ciri, and that's why he wanted to save her. I know he needed an informant, but later in the chapter, he thinks that Ciri's dead. And then it's almost where, okay, Ciri's dead. And again, I'm pulling this completely out of my ass. There's nothing actually in there to say what it is. It's just maybe it's just, okay, Ciri's dead. This can be like kind of a replacement. Not exactly the same, but it's just I can be tied to Ciri through this girl that he thought was her at the beginning, who was a smartass, who was very headstrong. I like the way that she was introduced there. And I just like that she came in and just caused trouble
Yeah.
and just like literally and just everyone she's annoying everybody. Geralt's just like, will you shut up, please? I need you there. And then Milva's pissed at her. Regis is like, she's a criminal. Why should we trust her? And she's like, who the hell are you to talk like that? And of course,
Yeah.
Regis, this vampire, very stoic in that sense, is just, probably just his clutching his pearls or whatever, in whatever Regis fashion that could be. I was like that she was a wild card and how close she was to Milva. They were different enough, and we see very clearly here also where Milva kind of puts her arm around her and they talk without, there's no words there. It's forgiven. They get closer, no spoiler coming in there, but we know that they kind of get closer. And I just love the dynamic that she brought that in a way drove everyone annoyingly apart. But then by the end of this chapter, they're all together before they split up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're together on the same page for like one evening, and that's good enough.
What I really like with Angoulême is because she's this lawless bandit, this urchin and stuff, and it's quite important, obviously, for getting people to think about what's going on with Siri, because the dreams that they've been having, and they're seeing her in these strange places and the company she's with. So it's kind of a sobering thought. What I particularly like about her, it's really well observed, is the way she keeps calling people nuncle and auntie, and
Yeah.
how it's pissing them off.
Nuncle.
And it just makes me chuckle, because where I live in the northeast, urchins of this sort, sort of street urchins, are called chavas, and chavas refer to people as lads and lasses if they're like boys or girls of interest, or young men or women, anyone that basically you would consider someone worth bothering with.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're not, you're just a gadgie, or an old gadgie if you're a bloke. And then a woman who's considered to not be of interest anymore is just called a wife or a wifey,
Yeah.
And that is meant pejoratively as well when they're saying it about you. Who overhear themselves being discussed in those terms get offended because
Yeah.
they know it's meant with a sting in the tail. It's like, well, you're just a wife now. There's,
Yeah.
your life's over, sort of thing. It's really funny to pick up on that. And Milda gets more and more angry every time she calls her auntie. And one thing working class people hate is the fact that they're just used synonymously with the criminal class. You've got honest, perfectly hardworking people who do not like to be associated with it. They're all the same. It's like, no, we're bloody not. And that's very much what you're getting there with Milva. She's got a real issue with Angoulême and her attitude.
Yeah.
Again, it's impeccably observed that is a real thing.
Yeah. I know Unk is now popular, right, Brett? I'm referring to you as the high school teacher with a list of banned words. I have heard through the internet that obviously referring to somebody as Unk is just like, you old motherfucker. Like
It's like the new boomer. I
Yeah.
I don't hear that often. I'm dealing with the whole 6'7" thing now. That is
What is
just,
that?
it literally means nothing, and then I think people made it into something that's kind of dirty, and I can't handle it. And I literally, we are currently in the Gilded Age and Progressive era, in a discussion about workers, like, poor working conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned I work in the Amazon warehouse. And I was like, I worked there like 6, 7 years ago. And like 4 kids just gave them, but I'm like, I'm going to power on. And like, they know when I'm speaking, when it's a lecture, when we're doing notes and whatnot, I don't want to hear a goddamn word. Like, if I
Yeah.
hear anything more than like twice, I'm like, you good over there? Like, if you got a question, ask a question. But like, I want it. And so they start like, I see them kind of just laughing and whatnot. And like 30 seconds later, it's like, okay, y'all, what? It's like 5 boys. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are y'all going on about? What is this? Oh, no. I'm like, nope. I go, y'all have stopped down the lecture. Y'all got to say what it is. And I like hit the table. I'm fake angry, you know what I mean? But I'm like, no, y'all have to say it. And goes like, how long ago was it? I was like 6, 7 years ago. He's like, okay. And they start laughing. I'm like, what are y'all going on about? And I was like,
Yeah.
y'all have to say it. We are not continuing. So now the whole class is like yelling at them.
Yeah.
And then they said the 6, 7 thing, and somebody explained it to me the day before, and I went, "Oh my God!" And just, we lost the class. The class wanted that banned, so they're like, "Can we put that on the banned words board up there?" And I was like, "Yes, we can." And just randomly, I will literally not say those two numbers anymore. From then on, I literally said, between 5 and 8 years ago,
Oh my God.
I did this, because I'm like, and the other time I was like about to go, it was like 4 years ago. I'm like, I can't even say those two numbers anymore.
That's so silly.
It is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, Uncle Em as a character is so different, I think, than everyone else who's in the company. And like, I think when I first read this chapter, I not even like really bristled a little bit, but like I had a book and a half of like being with this 5-person company, and then we were sticking somebody into it, and I was like, oh, she feels like she like doesn't belong, and like I don't know if I was like very projective, I think, mentally, of like, no, we have the group of 5, meh. And then obviously over the course of the book, like really enjoyed her. But she is so different. And I think, as you said, Brett, I do like the introduction that she is similar to Siri, because even though the differences end quite quickly, and like the way that she speaks is so unique compared to what we've heard before, that like she's obviously not Siri, even when it's just like, you're right there, Nuncle, said Siri. It's like you already know, just based on the language and the dialect alone, that that's not. It colors the reasons for why Geralt, I think, wants to make sure that she's okay. even if she's not Ciri, it gives him enough pause to advocate for her. And I think the company's added so many weird misfits. And, going back to that excerpt in Baptism of Fire, when they're like, we've got a vampire, a Nilfgaardian who says he's not a Nilfgaardian. We've got a silly half-dryad, not real woman. We have like a stupid bard. We have a vampire and a witcher who has to deal with moral scruples. Then Regis is just like, yep, we should try to get on so we don't raise a laugh. And I feel like it's like, what's one more,
I like how out of all those, you're like, we have a stupid bard.
That is definitely not a direct quote.
But all the things to do, we got this, a Nilfgaard, a stupid bard, and like everything was just so like kind of roundabout, just stupid bard. I'm like, yeah, Dandelion, yeah, that's him. There's a lot you can call Dandelion, and that's definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's highlighted as being quite pretty in this bit, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
In the description of it, which is quite nice. But you've also got the fact that this is one of the first times that Geralt's infirmity is catching up with him. His disability that he's carrying. It's the reason he can't fight properly with Cahir, because his knee gives way. Catches him out because although he was ready for it, saw it coming, he couldn't react to it because his leg wouldn't move. So it's a nice little forewarning about what he's going to be facing in the next few chapters.
I love that we get just another character in another unexpected way, and Geralt has been dogged by the law of surprise at every step and turn of his life. Why not another?
Why not another?
Yeah.
I'd be remiss also. I like Angoulême because I think I'm maybe a Francophile who doesn't want to admit it, but I definitely like the south of France. Like Eleanor of Aquitaine, come on, how can you not enjoy her? Occitan, all that right there. In Angoulême is an actual town in the south of France. Occitan. Justice for the Cathars and the Albigensians, even though maybe that might not have actually been a thing. There's a big crusade down there for heretics. So when I saw that name, I was like, oh my God, I know that's a walled city. It's still around there. So I'm like, it's weird that he gave a character a name after a town in southern France with that weird of a name. But again, it's Sapkowski in his awesome lunacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As we continue on, eventually Geralt gets Angoulême released. They head back to the company with Regis. At this point, Geralt's suspicion of Cahir, that he believes that Cahir is some sort of secret informant to Nilfgaard, or whatever powers that may be. His suspicion of Cahir explodes into a fight that is only stopped by Milva's intervention. What do you guys think this conflict, both Geralt and Cahir, as well as, with the rest of the company getting dragged into it, what does that reveal about trust, prejudice, and leadership within the Hanza itself?
I think the difficulty here is Regis has tried really hard to talk him out of it, but he doesn't want to try and impose his will on him at all, which is quite interesting. He's got all that wisdom, but he doesn't feel that he should try and exert control over Geralt in any way, trying to reason with him. But I think Geralt's, it's not so much that he's a man with a hammer who sees every problem as a nail, but it's something like that.
I mean, it's not that.
Yeah.
He does kind of reveal later, it's like he's actually beginning to understand what the problem is, and he doesn't want to face that. So he'd rather punch Cahir in the face than face up to the fact that Cahir's not the problem, and that he probably knows in his heart of hearts. Well, again, he's got this wrong as well, but he suspects that maybe it's someone else who's betrayed Ciri, is the way his mind's going at the time, and maybe a good punch up is the easiest way for him to deal with it. But it does give a chance for Milva to show us what even-handed justice looks like, which is very careful to lay even numbers of strokes with her strap on both Cahir and Geralt. And then, of course, Angoulême unfortunately calls her auntie one more time. Gets slapped as well. I told you I was going to do that. So there you go. That's real justice. I told you what the law is. You've done it again.
I was going to say, I love the slow reveal of the traitor, of who he thinks is the traitor. And it's just, we had 5 people, and now we have 6, and they said we had 4. Isn't that what it was? There were 5.
Yeah.
There were 4 people and a vampire, but so there was 5 people, but there's only reported that 4. And that's the numbers, right? It's not 4 and 5 before they come in. Okay. And I love that because as I was reading this, I was like, oh shit, who is he talking about? Because I'd totally forgotten like who he's talking about. And then we see what Ciri says at the end. It was like, oh, he thinks it's Yennefer. So at this point, Geralt thinks he's been betrayed by Yen. He thinks that Ciri's dead.
Mm-hmm.
He has nothing to lose. And like these upcoming, I'm going to have to reread these chapters because these are some of my favorite.
Yeah.
When Geralt goes full on, nothing matters anymore. The two people that I really would have cared about have one betrayed me, the other adopted daughter is dead. And it's where he goes into, I ain't even a Witcher. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
he's totally thinking about everything. And so he just lashes out at Kyre. Like, and he apologized at the end. I love this Geralt. I love this Geralt that's just not so reserved and gruff that he's like, I don't give a shit anymore. And even Regis is just saying, like, bro, you're not in your right mind. This isn't it. You know this isn't it. And he's basically like,
Yeah.
shut the hell up, and goes up. And he fucks around and finds out. He accuses Kyre. Kyre's like, oh, okay. And like Kyre doesn't immediately do it. He's like, I'm a traitor. Yep. I'm a traitor. Blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Geralt's like, huh. And he just clocks him. And I'm
Yeah.
like, God, this is awesome. Best part of this chapter for me.
And one
Yeah.
of the great things Kahir says is, I see it's incumbent on me to prove my innocence.
Yeah,
You know,
yes, very good.
it's like, really, it's like, this is your idea of justice, is it? You know, you're just simply accusing me of something.
And
Yeah.
Geralt says, if I had any evidence, you'd already been filleted.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like he knows he's just like, I'm accusing you of this. I don't give a shit that I have no evidence. Everybody here doesn't agree with me, but I don't care anymore because I've been betrayed and my daughter's dead, and I'm lashing out at the world because I'm emotional Geralt who has to solve every problem with hammering the nail.
Yeah.
It feels like as much as people say he's like so stoic, he just doesn't have the emotional resolution and resiliency to just like deal with it in a rational way. I think despite, as you said, Regis trying to get into his head and just like calm him down, for him it's obvious Regis wouldn't do it. It's obvious Milva wouldn't do it. It's obvious Dandelion wouldn't do it. He still doesn't trust Kahir. And so it just seems like the only answer. There is nothing else outside of his imagination that could possibly point to another informant. When it comes down to it, though, when he loses control, like it undermines his credibility, it undermines his leadership. And they already see him as the leader and have since this company started. But again, since that fish soup scene in like Baptism of Fire, they defer to him as their leader, but they still like float around his incompetencies and his stubbornness.
Yeah.
So like they're even filling in the gaps for him when he can't handle himself and when he self-sabotages. So it is kind of like a lot of that. Like he is letting his prejudices get the best of him because he doesn't want to face, you know, quote unquote, the truth, which is, as we find out, that Yennefer could have betrayed him. Obviously, the scene itself with Milva just like taking control is just chef's kiss. Very good and very funny. It's comedic, but it is also a comedic aspect of the theme that we see overall in the chapter of just like justice and violence and like what it looks like to take justice into your own hands. And even though it's not gory, it is still effective. And they have the fear of God put into them and certainly causes them to behave themselves and to snap out of it for sure. Yeah.
And there's lots of very smart writing here as well, because as Brett says, you know, the chapter's only got like a couple of things really that happen, and the rest of it's all philosophy.
Yeah.
So very, very, very Witcher. But you think back to the very beginning of the book when you've got everyone who knows Ciri jumping out of bed, you know, with that sudden startlement in the night and the night jars all flying and things. And then obviously that keys us into this because this is what starts happening now. You've got the merchants that are nearby are shooting fireworks. And this is great, you know, because he does this pathetic symmetry a couple of times. So fireworks being let off, and that lets everyone know it's the equinox. So that's like, oh, okay, that's why the fireworks are being done. But then obviously he even references the fact that the fireworks that then kick off in their camp when they're all punching each other is even more impressive than the ones that the merchants are setting off. But anyone who's obviously read the saga, straight away when they hear about there's a festival going on and fireworks going off, you can't help it but go back to something more. Yennefer and Geralt are being very nice to each other on a blanket while she's setting fireworks off. And again, the symmetry with that one was there was fireworks going on there. There was the ones in the sky, and then there was the ones between the two of them on the blanket. And so just subtly there, just because you've read that and you remember that, just bringing up the fireworks again, although it sets it in time and allows us to get the timeline right with what's happening to Syria and stuff with it being the equinox. It also reminds you of Yennefer before she's ever mentioned, as to where Geralt's mind is going. That's really sneaky. And I'll doff my cap to him. I think he's amazing how he does stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely very subtle and very poetic. We also end up returning to another favorite moment in a previous book. And in this scene, when the company's trying to decide who stays and who goes, Regis volunteers to stay behind. And after the Battle of the Bridge, he refuses to fight again, citing his own cowardice. But Milva insists that he was brave for staying with her through his miscarriage. What does this exchange reveal about different forms of courage? And do you think Regis's refusal to fight in this ambush is an act of weakness, honesty, or some other kind of strength?
I think it's a problem when you live in such a martial world where a sword is almost everything. That almost is the power, where nobody can mess with you if you're a good swordsman. Like when it comes down, Geralt, whenever he's usually threatened, sword comes out, and that's kind of it wants to live and die by the sword kind of thing. And so I do think that is something almost from a writer's perspective, like Sapkowski's perspective, is to show that courage and that bravery without it being with a sword. And the only thing I could think of is you'd have to do something courageous or show that where something bad more than likely is going to happen to you, some kind of bodily harm, but you can't return that. And I guess that would be the courage or the bravery, would be somehow standing up for somebody or stopping something without saying, hey, if you don't stop it, I'm going to kill you.
I've realised that every episode I come on, I end up talking about the Wild West. I'm really sorry. It seems to be a thing with me. But
We've got a few more to go, so maybe it's a little Easter egg moving forward.
Maybe it's just listening to Brett, but it's the one of the greatest westerns ever made, Shane, which changes every time you watch it as you grow up through life. See, when I first saw it, I was a little boy, and obviously the hero is Shane, the gunfighter, who's going to go and put everything right in the town at the end and take out the evil Jack Palance gunfighter, the bad guy. He's going to shoot him and everything's going to be good, and he's the goodie and the hero, and wow, isn't it wonderful? And of course, later you learn that he's not the hero at all. It's the dad, the farmer, the man who goes into town to face Jack Palance, not expecting to die, but standing up for what's right, and knowing that his wife's got feelings for the gunfighter, and maybe it's probably better if he's not around anymore. And boy, it makes you teary just thinking about it.
Yeah.
What a story.
I'm gonna have to revisit that one because, again, like you said, little boy, I'm like, wait, when did I see that? It might have been when I was first on an Old West kick back in the '90s when I was like a young or like an early teenager. But you talk about different things. You go back and look on The Searchers. That one, you look and you're like, well, it's John Wayne. He's the main character, and he's going to save the kidnapped woman from the Indians. And then, you watch it, and then again, you go up and you're like, oh, wow, he's going to save this woman simply because he really hates these Indians so much and what he wants to do. And especially because it's John Wayne being like typecast, he's always the good guy. And so when he does that, I'm thinking, okay, that's another good one to do. But I'll have to mark that down. I'll have to rewatch Shane.
Yeah, I find this conversation so interesting just because Milva is so certain that, like, anybody would have run away if they were a true coward. When I lost my legs, when I couldn't walk and we were under fire, a true coward would have run away and left me alone to die. But you stayed, you made sure I got through this, and that is courage. I would assume that there's two levels of this for Sapkowski as a writer. One, it's honesty to the character. I think Regis is by nature a pacifist, and I think he's been written as that up until this point, so it makes sense, for him to be like, I'm a little queasy about the bloodshed, and then for him to run off to Toussaint. That kind of makes sense. I think the other side is also pulling out a probably overpowered character ahead of a fight.
Definitely.
And making sure that he's a little bit out of the picture before we set the humans on each other as we're stepping into this ambush. But I do think that, it's after that, meta-analysis, I do think that kind of honesty is important. And yeah, a different kind of self-awareness is a strength of some kind. One that's not necessarily conducive to a battlefield.
Yeah, and that did actually trigger something back in me. I do think in the immediate future, And then maybe way down the line, at this point, Regis, again, having, pacifist and whatnot, at this point, he has come to beware. And maybe sometime in the far future, he will not come to beware.
Mhm.
And if you know, further down the line.
Yeah.
And he's also quite careful to say, I don't want to be involved in violence if I can help it.
Yeah.
It's like if it's not necessary. So it's like, he has put in that marker out there. It's like, if forced, you back me into a corner, I'll fight. It's like, well, you don't want to think what's going to happen then.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of on the line I was saying for going down. Yeah, that eventually becomes about.
Toward the end of the chapter, believing Ciri dead, Geralt narrows his focus on simply revenge. He says things like, the time for decisive action has arrived, time for throats to be cut. I have to add an edge to that. I can't really take it seriously when I'm reading it out of context. He also says, when they're about to set off, so let us begin and may hell assist us. And he goes, here, Angoulême, to horse. And it's... Again, reading it out of context, but imagining Geralt, it's a little bit, I think, too serious for him. But, looking at this focus on revenge, do you think this marks a return to his Witcher instincts or a really dangerous departure from them and who he is as a character?
Who wants a Wild West movie reference?
Me.
Okay, Tombstone, 1993.
I was 1 year old.
It's a great movie. Wyatt Earp is about to go on his ride of revenge and vengeance. Tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me, is what he says. And so as soon as I saw that, I was like, so let us begin and may hell assist us. That's such a proper way of saying it that I almost think that's just almost like a lost in translation thing.
Yeah.
Where there is no hell's coming with me and like Polish or whatever. And it just literally translated or something as let us begin and may hell assist us. It's just so proper, but literally it's a great line that Kurt Russell delivers in there about, hell's come with you. So I thought that maybe was something of where it came from. I do think though it is, I guess now we can get really philosophical. And what are Witcher instincts? Is a Witcher instinct to kill? Is a Witcher instinct to kill something that is threatening? Is it one of those like, well, it just depends what school you're in, depending on what it is? And so I guess a Witcher instinct is they're a killing machine. What are they supposed to kill? What are they trying to do? Witcher should not kill for vengeance, right? Because it's about killing monsters to defend people.
I mean, that's what Vesemir says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of the thing in here where you just can, discuss, whatever you think a Witcher instinct is.
I don't know, Softie, if you have thoughts, but I would assume it is that stereotypical desire to kill. For Geralt, you have that quote unquote animalistic instinct and then that higher reasoning, which he is so wont to do. And I think when he starts to just purely think about revenge and he gets that taste of bloodlust, it's not just about him becoming a Witcher again of some kind and that cold-hearted killer. I think it's actually a pivot into that, if I was to put a nuance there, where I don't think that's really him. I don't think that he himself is want to vengeance. And I think it's more of he's being pushed to that. He's being backed into a wall and he thinks this is the only way out. And he needs to exact some kind of retribution for what he believes has happened to his kid. And so I actually think that him setting out on this course is a departure from where his character's moral compass probably lies.
They sort of announced that, the time for aimless wandering is past. We've actually got a real lead at last. Just beyond the horizon.
Really, Geralt?
We'll give him the benefit of the doubt here.
It's been 2 books, dude.
Is that Sapkowski telling the audience, look, we're getting on. We're going somewhere, I promise. We're getting there.
Just to write an author's author's intervention.
That was an editor's note or something like that. He's like, we're going to get on with it, I promise.
That's just Geralt, though. I mean, he's left Brokilon. He then does that weird crab walk southeast across Temeria and Angren. He's now crossed the Yaruga, wandering sort of aimlessly about. And then they say, oh, no, the Druids have moved. He's about to do his partner and go off 30 miles west again. And then he says, no, don't do that. Just go ahead. Go straight south. So it's like, okay, so off he's going. He's talking about, well, great, we've got a lead. There's this half elf, so we need to go and apprehend him and have a word with him and find out who he's working for. And then once he hears that, well, feels that Ciri's dead, can't feel her presence anymore and stuff, it's like, well, that's it. Just gonna kill the guy. Not interested in who he did it for or anything, which is not good thinking on his part, but hardly surprising. But then, he's missing out on the main point anyway, which is when Angoulême has said, this half elf who's hired Nightingale to do the ambush and things, that this was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And describes his companions, including Milva, with her short hair, and she hasn't cut her hair yet. So what was a beautiful organic piece of character development with Milva previously, when she's enough of this mourning and stuff, and just chops her plait off, it's like, wow, it's really in character for her. It's brilliant. There's no sense of it. It's like, oh, this is a plot point, and yet it becomes one, that how did someone know she's going to have short hair before she cut her hair? That doesn't make sense. And Geralt doesn't even question this. I mean, Regis is. He's saying, you're not thinking that the stuff that you're not considering in what we know, the facts of this situation, which is what leads them on to their next suspicion. There's a lot of things that get tied together there. Probably one of the silliest ones, but I've raised it before and I'll raise it again. When Ciri's in hiding, mushrooms come into play. And that morning after the equinox, when they're riding through the woods, he describes the whole place as still carpets of mushrooms everywhere. And Ciri's just done the ultimate vanishing act. So
Yeah.
I
Oh
think
my
that's
goodness.
amazing. I almost begin to think that, although I picked it out as like just one of those things, a coincidence, I'm not sure now. But the other thing was the discussion about, hell following with them. The one that I immediately jumped to, because it starts with a quote from Genesis, but from Revelations, you've got, I looked and there was a pale horse and its rider's name was Death. Hell followed him. That's straight away was my thought about riding and bringing hell with you. So really it should be, lo, there was a bay horse and his rider was pale hair. That's
Yeah.
what we should be going for.
Yeah, I mean, Sapkowski does such a nice job of like bookending these chapters so they feel complete. I actually think like this chapter feels less complete than some of the other ones in Tower of Swallows because, again, nothing really happens plot-wise, but that is a nice way to kind of conclude it and tie it back, just the Genesis and like that reference to Revelations, which I would be genuinely surprised if that was not intentional.
Yeah, and I had the same feeling as you that when I was reading it was like, where's the chapter break there?
Yeah.
It's like, because it sort of continues, doesn't it? There's no
Yeah.
reason for it. All that's happened is three of them are going to do one thing and the others are doing something, but it's not a natural break point.
Mhm.
But when you look at it, it's like, because we're just discussing crime and punishment, that's why. And
Yeah.
we're done with that. We're on to something else now. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, so don't just read it as a story, always read those little prefaces before each chapter and stuff. It's so important.
Yeah, I guess that brings us to the true close of the chapter, where we come back again to Ciri and Visigoda. The chapter concludes with Ciri recalling her dream of Geralt, which is this final conversation, is what she's dreamt about. How does her inclusion and her reflection on her dream really shape the reader's experience and change what they have read so far?
After the little break, you have the little summary. There's like that little bit of text where it was saying if somebody would have walked in there and they would have blah, blah, blah. And it reminds me of the werewolf in The Mermaid Tale. What was that one again?
Little sacrifice. Yeah.
Same as that right there. If somebody would have gone up to the window, they would have seen this, they would have seen this, and blah, 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 because they were in the marches. There is zero reason for that to be in there. All that paragraph or two did was say what we just read. But God damn it, Sapkowski, is that not like your signature? And I'm reading it and I'm like, this doesn't belong here. It's unnecessary, but I loved it. And I reread it again, just like I did the stupid werewolf thing of Dandelion crying. And I'm like, I don't know why it's good. I can't say why it should even be in there, except I love it. And I know that I'm reading Sapkowski and I'm reading The Witcher.
So that does end up bringing us to the end of the chapter and to the end of our discussion. But Softie, Brett, do you guys have any final thoughts on Tower of Swallows, chapter 5?
I loved it. Was not expecting it to again be just so wordy. I loved reading 9 straight lines of Geralt just going on and on and on, and then somebody saying one thing, and then him saying 7 lines, and just going, just not. I loved it. I missed it. Great chapter. It's Lady of the Lake is my favorite book just because it's so weird. And
Okay.
Sapkowski's so weird in that one that he finally just like fully embraced it. Like he
Yeah.
time jumps here and it gets weird and it's annoying because it's like, why are we doing that? And Lady Lake is like, all right, this is it. And it just goes all over. I think it wraps up. This to me, it's the split up. They're about to get to Beauclair. They're about to get to Toussaint. And it's the end game is being established kind of right here. And if anybody, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are following this and following your show like chapter by chapter. You're in for a treat. It's going to be great. And I absolutely adored this chapter.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I've had a new sort of feeling about this book in particular, though, because
Tell me
this
more.
I've had quite a week. So on Tuesday, I had to have an operation done. So I had a skin cancer that needed to be removed, and they had to take a flap of skin from my forehead and sew it down over the wound and stuff. So I'm sorry, I'm looking a bit gruesome on camera, but fortunately the listeners won't have to worry about. On Friday, I had to take the bandage off. So I found myself really thinking about the scene with Siri where she's trying to look under the bandages and see her scarred face, because I had no idea how bad this would be under here. It was really something. So I had this funny sort of cosplay thing going on where it's like, oh, I'm feeling like Siri, but looking like Visigodo. It was so funny. It was fortunate really that I was just getting the giggles thinking about, this split personality that I'm going through. But but everything's good, and nice to get this big weight off my mind and stuff. That all clear, they got rid of the tumor and everything, so I should be fine. It's just funny how it tied up that I was in bandage all week, not knowing what I looked like underneath.
Yeah, updated the Discord that you had undergone surgery, and I'm so glad to hear that like you are feeling better, you're looking great, and that, everything is clear for the moment. I'm so excited to have you on for the rest of season 2. Yay!
Well, thank you.
This chapter, I think, is again back to the bumbliness of Baptism of Fire in like a very fun kind of like insular way, where we get to explore and enjoy like the character dynamics within our company, and then add like another fun little variable to the mix. So Angoulême will, see her through the rest of the next few chapters, the next book, and I'm excited to, I think, like fall in love with her again. And Milva scene, the Cahir and Geralt fighting scene, Chef's Kiss, had all the great aspects of The Witcher down to the like moral and philosophical debates. So yeah, wonderful chapter, and so glad I got a little wash of history from both of you. I just got to sit and admire how much you guys keep in your heads and listen to two historians really like chat.
This was a blast. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. Softie, I hope we can run it back for a Lady of the Lake chapter in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm going to have you guys on for Brenna if you want to, and I'm so scared for that episode.
That is, I will.
Going to be a two-parter.
I know I'm setting myself up for, like, this is regret in the most affectionate way, because there's going to be so much to fucking edit, and I know that already.
I will move heaven and earth. I will not miss that recording for anything. But I also think because in that chapter, a lot of it is just little snippets, It's nothing major with like the characters and whatnot. So I think we'll be somewhat restrained.
Brett.
Yeah.
Do you know that Softie is working on a entire miniature army in order to map out the movements of the military campaigns at Brenna?
I didn't know that, but I thought, because I mentioned this, I think when you were going to the bathroom there, that I listened to an episode that Softie was on the previous one. I guess that was the Battle of the Bridge one, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
And something came up that was like the military, and maybe it was something like that, or you dealt in miniatures or something like that. Because that was something in my head that I was like, wait, is that a thing? No, I might have heard that from something else. So if that is the case, then hopefully that'll be fully done. And we can just
mess around with miniatures, yeah.
There you go. Well, if you're doing a Brenna one, hopefully you can get that filmed camera, and then might be a 3-parter then, and then we can discuss the tactical mistakes of Lieutenant Flout, was that the scout that didn't go? Was that his name?
Yeah. I'm like, do I throw Dan from the Netherlands too in there and just like really just sit back and let the episode happen, which truly for Brenna, maybe. It might be so fun.
Could get people in to specialize on different bits of it, just
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
if
idea.
nothing
there.
else.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, we're going into it. Be
Sure.
careful.
That's for a problem for next year or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, on that note, you can find the Witcher Book Club, as well as Brett and Softie in the Hanza Discord. Thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to our Hanza for listening. Next episode, join us as we continue our discussion of Andrzej Sapkowski's Tower of Swallows with Chapter 6. Thanks for joining us at the breakfast table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and a complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastandboclair.com. Breakfast and Boclair is created by Alyssa from Good Morn. It's hosted by Alyssa. The show is edited by Alyssa and Caleb Byes, with music by Alex Berner. Breakfast and Boclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City, with Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob E., Charlotte from Edinburgh Glamour, the original Roach, Libby, John of Roblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Kate the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Miriam Tamaria, Softie, Lisa C., and Sidna. Special thanks to Brett and Softie for joining us for this episode, and our international Hanza for their support.